Photoshop has some amazing capabilities when it comes to painting, and there's no better place to start exploring these options than the brush panel. So let's go up to the window menu and select brush. That opens up our brush panel. Now before we get started here, there's a few house cleaning things I want to go over. At the bottom of the tools panel, notice that I have a blue foreground and a red background color. I want you to have these identical colors. So simply click on this foreground chip. That opens up the color picker box, and I want you to set the red, green, and blue values that I have. 49 for the red, 52 green, and 183 for the blue. Then hit OK. And I'd like for you to do the same by clicking on this background color chip. Now set 174 for the red, 32 for the green, and 17 for the blue. Hit OK. Now our brush panel at this point is completely grayed out. Why is that? Well, we don't have any of the brush tools selected. So let's go select our brush tool. Now we can see that our brush panel is ready for use, but we're not quite ready yet. Let's go and create a brand new document. Under the File menu, select New. That's Control-N on the PC, Command-N on the Mac. And I want us to start with the same size document, so change your preset here to default Photoshop size if you're not there already. And what I'd like to do is change the width here. So I want you to change that to a 10. And I'm going to hit the Tab key to cycle down to the height. And under height, I want you to enter 10 as well. So we'll both be starting with a square document. And then simply hit OK. We're going to hit the F key to cycle through to full screen mode with menu bar. I'm invoking the hand tool here with the space bar so I can drag this image out from beneath the brush panel. And now we are ready to get started. The very first thing to know about the brush panel is that in this top window we have our brush shapes. We have icons showing us the shapes of brushes available in this brush library. I want you to go down to the bottom of the brush panel, click on the Preset Manager icon. In the right flyout menu, select Reset Brushes. I want you to replace your current brushes, so press OK. I've already got my defaults, so I'm going to hit Cancel. Then hit Done. We're going to start with a simple brush. I've got my 65 brush here selected. What does that 65 mean? And you'll notice that all of the brushes have numbers. That's simply telling you the brush size. So if I click here to 19 and went here to 65, we're changing the brush size. So you can see this is a 65 pixel brush. But I can easily change that with the right or left bracket keys. I'm going to bump it up just a couple of points. Now I'm simply going to click and drag to paint. Notice that the line I painted is very soft and fuzzy. And also in the bottom of the brush panel in our brush stroke preview, you can see that same soft fuzzy brush stroke. That's because in the options bar we can pull down here, our hardness is set to 0%. That is the preset for that brush shape. We can drag this over and make it 100%. Now, if we paint, we have a hard edge. Notice that at the bottom of the brush panel, that preview updated as well. So anytime you make a change to a brush, you can preview that before you even paint, right down in that stroke preview box. So far, if you've been seeing an animated brush icon in the upper left of your document window, you've got the brush preview enabled. Your video card supports that. You can turn that off because we're not going to use it here by simply clicking on this brush preview icon. That's a nice little feature that you have if your video card supports it, but it is far from necessary and we're not going to be using that in this tutorial, so you can go ahead and turn that off. Now if you're thinking to yourself, well, brushes would be great if I could draw. Well, have no fear, Photoshop to the rescue. We've looked at a very basic brush shape. We can see some bristles here that we're going to talk about in a few moments, but if you scroll down in this shape library, you'll notice that we have some very interesting shapes. Here's a leaf. Now if I simply click, I've painted a leaf. If I click again, I've painted another one. So even if you don't know how to draw a leaf, you can draw a leaf. Watch what happens if I click and drag. Now I've got leaves stacked on top of each other. Now this is the default setting here. Now I'm going to show you the cool stuff in the brush panel. We can see here below the shape previews we've got a size slider. That's the same as using the bracket keys. We can make the brush bigger or smaller, but I'm going to jump down here to spacing. Watch what happens in our stroke preview box if I drag the spacing slider. look at that, it's spacing out our brush strokes. So now if I paint, my leaves are nicely spaced out. Pretty cool, huh? What else can I do? Well, we've got a flip X and flip Y checkbox. If I click on flip X, watch what happens in the stroke preview. The leaves are now flipped horizontally. If I check the flip Y box, they're now flipped vertically. You can use both of these together. You could use one or the other. You could turn them both off, obviously. So that's an interesting way that you can add some variety to your drawing. You can change the angle here of the shapes. Right now it's at 0 degrees. I'm going to click on the word angle and set this to 45 degrees. And you can see now that the brushes are tilted at a 45-degree angle. Let's set that back to 0 for now. We can change the roundness. With these leaves, they're going to look best at 100%, but I'll show you what, let's say, 30% would look like. So they're a little bit flat, almost like they're pressed on a page. Let's set this back to 100%. So we've got some very cool options here to paint with. Now we have changed our default values for this leaf brush. We've changed the spacing, we played with flipping it X and Y. The thing to remember about brush presets are, you can change them at will, but anytime you click off of this brush and select another one, when you return to that original brush, it will take its default settings. So if we go here to this other leaf brush, which is very nice. Actually, let's paint with that a little bit. There we go. If we move back to our original leaf, now our spacing is set back to 25, and any other changes we would have made here have been lost. So if you would like to make changes to a brush shape and maintain those changes, here's what you do. Let's change the spacing here. Put it something like there. Let's flip this, and let's put the angle at 15 degrees, for example. Now what we'd like to do, if we want to be able to go back to this brush preset, go up to the flyout menu at the top of the brush panel and select New Brush Preset. It gives us a default name. Scattered Maple Leaves is the original name, and it's adding a 1, so it won't overwrite that. Notice that we have Capture Brush Size in Preset. Right now it's at 74, so if we check that box, our new brush preset will be 74 pixels. We can simply hit OK. And now let's move to a different brush. Let's go to this sort of 3-leaf guy here. Now if we go back to our original brush, well, there's the default settings, but we have our new brush preset down here that maintains the characteristics we just put in. Now I'd like to talk to you a bit about bristle tips. All of these standard brush shapes have what's called static tips. But if we click on one of these bristle tip brushes with the very cool icons here, you'll notice that our menu options change below. We have a bristle qualities box. We can change the shape of it. This is a round point. We could do something like a round curve, for example, and notice here in this preview box what that does. We can change the amount of bristles. We can increase them. We can decrease them. We can change the length of the bristles. We can change thickness. Now if you make it very thick, you're sort of taking out all of the individual bristles there. We could change the stiffness of it, for example, and we can change the angle. And of course our old friend spacing. So all of these parameters we can change for any of these bristle brushes. So if we click on this fan brush here, we can see how this paints. Let's click and draw with that. But if we change the bristle amount here, let's reduce those, make them a bit less stiff, and change the angle. Now we have a slightly different stroke. So all of those things that you can play with your brush bristles.